for the Egyptian market. Al Jazeera has a certain hour for the North African market. But what hasn't been successful yet is to bring the ad revenue. Maybe they have audience, but they don't have the ad revenue. So it is a very interesting time. If I was a professor of media and communication, I will monitor those experiments that is taking place. Can Al-Arabiya secure a position and maintain it even if some Egyptian entrepreneur launched the first 24-hour Egyptian news channel? Can they maintain it? I don't know, but it's something. Al-Arabiya, Al Jazeera, they are in a better position to broadcast news even from Egypt compared to local Egyptian channels. Local Egyptian channels, they find the easier way of talk shows. The Egyptian airwaves are full with talk shows, lots of talk shows. You can choose something like at least 10 talk shows every night. But a local reporter who report on an incident from Imbaba, that doesn't exist yet. But I'm sure eventually it will happen. Somebody will pick up the idea and they will start some kind of a news channel in Egypt, another probably news hours in Tunisia, and I'm talking about local channels. But right now, the only channels who are experimenting with that are Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya, and I hope Al Arab will do the same. He received a phone call from his superiors asking him why the British media is so anti the Saudi royal family and anti the Saudi government. And he told his superior, I will check on that and come back to you. So he, after 2 months, the prince continued with the story that he sent his superior the following fax or telegram that you are right, Your Highness, that the British media is really nasty toward the royal family of Saudi Arabia and the government of Saudi Arabia, but you should see how nasty they are to their own royal family and their own government. So I can imagine something like that the future Minister of Information would say to either the Americans or to the Saudi Minister of Information when he passes a complaint.
Next, we'll see the New York Times reporting on Palestinian children who were killed that first year. And it is the red line. You'll notice that it is following a very similar curve to the New York Times reporting on Israeli children's deaths and on the death curve of Israeli children. It is lower, but it's a similar curve. Next, we'll see the New York Times. Next, we'll see the actual death curve of Palestinian children killed by Israelis that first year of beginning in fall of 2000. And that's it. This bizarre pattern of reporting we have found in all of our studies of the Associated Press, of regional newspapers, of the various networks. This is why most Americans don't know what's going on and why I'm so grateful to Dr. Anthony for bringing a panel about Palestine. That there had been 28 Israeli children killed by Palestinians and 131 Palestinian children killed by Israelis. How is this covered in our primetime network news programs? We discovered, if you'll notice the chart, that they reported on Israeli children's deaths at rates up to 13 and 14 times greater than they reported on Palestinian deaths.
As I say, if you watch across the all broadcast media, which is ABC, NBC, Fox, and CNN, there was, before the Arab Spring, of course, it was the stereotype, anything to do with 9/11 or anything to do with terrorism cases is always, guilty before you prove innocence. People rush to judgment, etc. The reporting is really not in depth. They have lesser and lesser people, and that's because of the problem the print media is facing, which is the original foreign correspondent. When they send somebody to the region, they've been living there, they know what's happening, and they come back with the real story. Now they take it from the agencies, sometimes they ignore the story altogether. Of course, with the Arab Spring happening, there was the region became back into focus, especially with Egypt, because that was the beginning of the revolution, and there was access for journalists. Syria is a different story because now we are reduced to use YouTubes and other format of really bad quality television, but it's vital for the outside world to know what's happening from inside Syria. So it is, as I said, it depends. I mean, you can still read fantastic stories in the print media like the New York Times, and you see terrible reporting on stations like Fox News.
Let me answer from my perspective, from the Arab side. How would Arab media affect or handle America's matter or American government matters in Arab media? I feel that America will enjoy in the future, or maybe it already to enjoy a better positioning than it used to be before. Why is that after the Arab Spring? Number one, because the Palestinian question, the Palestinian issue is stepping back. It is not in the front pages in the Arab press as it used to be before. And that was the touching point between Arabs and the American administration, usually because of Americans' support to Israel. But since it's stepping back and other issues are stepping forward, so I will see this criticism of American administration in the Arab media.
So the world has changed. It's no longer the Cold War, you know, when the United States wanted to set up Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, which did vital service. But now information is abundant. It's everywhere. And sometimes with that responsibility, we see so many news items that's been put in the news sphere, and nobody can check them, could be wrong. And then the last example I think we have seen in Lebanon, where it almost could have set up a Sunni-Shiite war over this story that was not credible. But I think we have moved from that, and that's thanks to what they call the pan-Arab news media, Al Jazeera in the beginning, that opened the way, paved the way for the first time ever to have some kind of credible news in terms of having an alternative point of view. It's not just a government, it's not just your prime minister, but somebody from the opposition can come and speak. And that's healthy, this is encouraging, it's very important to listen to all kind of diverse point of view. So if you wanted to learn from the West, the first thing you want to talk about is a free media cannot exist in a repressive society. It has to be existing in an open society. And this is, by the way, the United States has probably the most relaxed rules when it comes to the media in comparison to Western Europe and other democracies. And I give you an example. All of you has followed this movie that has caused so much trouble and turmoil. And people will ask us, well, how come the US government cannot stop this stupid movie? I'm sure with all this powerful intelligence and, you know, the president must know about it. Well, maybe he knows about it, or maybe somebody else knows about it, but he cannot stop it. Because it's the First Amendment of the US Constitution is to guarantee the freedom of expression. And this freedom of expression can be hateful, can be terrible. They can say the most abhorrent things about people, but yet in a free society you're allowed to tell people what they have to, what they don't like to say, and sometimes something even disgusting as that movie was. But that's not where the stage we're going to reach soon in the Arab media, because it's going to take a while. What I'm saying now is we are on the right direction. We have new television stations. I came from the print media, and I still have much more respect for the print media, because I think you have more space to analyze things and to write things. The television is very superficial to a certain extent. You have to reduce a very complex story to a soundbite or 2.5 minutes, but nevertheless, it's good. What we have seen now is not bad at all, but this is what we wanted to reach? Absolutely not. The most important thing about the media and television is money. Most of you know that funding is very important, and they always say follow the money in so many things, and I'll say the same in the Arab media. Is where the money comes from is dictate the policies of stations. And the worst thing for all of us, and we all know that, and again I'm going to be candid about it, is censorship. Censorship I experienced as a young Palestinian journalist working with the French news agency. We have to hand over things to the Israeli military. And censorship we have with all the stations that we work, without any exception, because it's called self-censorship. Because you know where the station stands, and there are certain things you say and certain things you cannot say. What I'm aspiring to have is one day that will be free of any kind of dictatorship, of dictating to us what can be said and what cannot be said. But journalism comes with responsibility. We have to. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's really tough, and I always say maintain your objectivity, trying to raise your voice, trying to convince as many people as you can, your editors, whatever. But the most important thing, instead of taking it from the agencies, have a correspondent on the ground. So your correspondent can tell you the story of what's happening. And big newspapers like New York Times and the Washington Post, in my time, 20 years ago, during the first Intifada, foreign reporters would never even venture to Gaza. They would use, foreign correspondents coming there and leaving. But now they actually hire Palestinians because all of a sudden, this is why always credibility is important, is paramount.
The word for governments was control. You control the media and the message, you control the population inside the borders, you control local and regional events. It was true for the governments in the region. It was true for U.S. policy, as reflected in our outsized focus on military capability. But today, information is ubiquitous. A generation ago in Saudi Arabia, you got your information from one or more of four sources: parents, teachers, imams, or tribal leaders. Today, every teenager we meet has at least one BlackBerry or iPhone with every app known to mankind. They are studying abroad or attending Saudi colleges with brand new dorm rooms, living with students from other villages with different views. We have gone from the dark days of the Cold War in Eastern Europe, where people would listen to their transistor radio, to an era where Saudis get 24-hour newscasts and receive constant Twitter feeds.